Welcome to our channel. We'd be grateful if you'd give this video a like and subscribe for more stories that matter. This is a story about a moment that sparked a movement when a retired educator, calmly seated in first class, faced a pilot's arrogance and turned a fleeting encounter into a viral lesson on dignity. With quiet strength, he exposed prejudice, shifted an industry, and reminded us all that presence can speak louder than words. Here's how one man's composure changed everything. When a 62-year-old man was publicly questioned about his place in first class, he didn't shout or protest. By the time the plane landed, his calm response had gone viral, and the airline was scrambling to control the damage. Raymond Carter, 62, wasn't the type to need validation. Broad-shouldered, with silver streaks in his close-cropped hair and eyes that held a lifetime of wisdom, he walked through Gate C-12 at Phoenix Sky Harbor with the quiet confidence of a man who knew exactly who he was. Dressed in a navy blazer, crisp khakis, and polished leather shoes, he carried a worn, leather-bound book of Langston Hughes poetry in his right hand. A reminder, he said, of who he was and where he came from. In his left, a boarding pass marked Seat 2A, First Class, Flight 349 to Seattle, boarding on schedule. Raymond was traveling for something simple, a quiet gift to himself after nearly 4 decades as a school principal in Decatur, Georgia. No family, no obligations, just a window view, a cold drink, and poetry in the clouds. He greeted the flight attendant with a soft, "How you doing?" and a warm smile that caught her off guard. She smiled back, scanned his ticket, and waved him to the first row. As Raymond settled into his seat, adjusting the pillow and overhead vent, he folded his blazer across his lap and opened his book. The cabin filled with murmurs, overhead bags, and half-smiles exchanged by strangers sharing airspace for the next few hours. Then came Captain Blake Reynolds, tall, tanned, and far too pleased with himself. The kind of pilot who wore sunglasses indoors and called flight attendants "sweetheart." He strode through first class like he owned not just the plane, but the people in it, nodding to familiar faces, chuckling at his own private joke. The flight engineer trailed behind. Then he stopped, right at row 2, right in front of Raymond. There was a pause, not long, but heavy. "Sir," Reynolds said, his voice loud and patronizing, "are you sure you're in the right seat?" Raymond didn't flinch. He closed his book, showed his boarding pass, and said, "That's what it says." Reynolds glanced at the ticket, then at Raymond, then at the seat. He forced a smile, but his eyes said something else. "Well, I guess they let anyone up here now." It wasn't loud, but it was clear. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone, as if Raymond's presence in first class offended him. A woman across the aisle shifted uncomfortably. Her husband, already recording on his phone, sensed something off. Raymond didn't argue or bristle. He leaned back and said quietly, "I reckon I earned this seat, same as anyone else." Reynolds smirked, muttering under his breath, "Sure you did," as he headed to the cockpit. The man with the phone caught it all. And that's where everything changed. The engines hummed, safety announcements began, but the cabin's energy shifted. Something had crossed a line. Raymond returned to his book. The man across the aisle whispered to his wife, "I got it all." She hesitated. "Should we post it?" He nodded. People need to see this ain't right. The plane hadn't even left the gate, but what Reynolds didn't know was who Raymond really was and how far this moment would reach. Raymond Carter didn't need anyone's approval. He'd earned every mile to seat 2A and 1,000 more. To understand why he didn't take Reynolds's bait, you need to know where he came from. He grew up in Monroe, Louisiana, in a small house with uneven grass and a porch that leaned slightly left. His father, Jerome Carter, a janitor at the local high school, was one of the smartest men Raymond knew. Jerome never made it past 8th grade, but could fix anything, quote Baldwin by heart, and taught Raymond more about self-respect than any textbook. Never let someone's assumptions about you become your truth, Jerome said. Most folks don't even know themselves, let alone you. Raymond carried that into every room, classrooms, staff meetings, parent nights, where some couldn't hide their surprise that he was the principal. Always polite, always sharp, always ready, not to prove himself, but to refuse anyone the chance to treat him as less. He started teaching English at 23 and became a principal by 35. He mentored kids who became lawyers, chefs, electricians, and soldiers who returned to shake his hand with tears in their eyes. But for every life he touched, there were stings. A store clerk trailing him, a woman clutching her purse tighter, a car dealership employee assuming he was lost. He never shouted. He'd just ask, calm and even, "Did I give you reason to think that? Would you say that to someone else in my place?" He didn't raise his voice. He raised the bar. So when Captain Reynolds made that comment, it wasn't new. It was just another version of the same thing Raymond had faced his whole life, dressed in a uniform, delivered with a smirk, but no different at its core. He'd taught kids to read between the lines. That tone mattered, that what wasn't said could be louder than what was. This moment in first class wasn't about a seat. It was about presence, about who's allowed in certain spaces without question. Raymond knew the power of silence, letting someone else feel the weight of their own ignorance. What Reynolds didn't know, and what no one on that plane yet realized, was that Raymond had spent a lifetime turning moments like this into teachable lessons, not just for kids, but for anyone who crossed a line and didn't expect to be held accountable. Across the aisle, the man who recorded it, Brian Lattimore, uploaded the clip before takeoff with a caption. "Sure you did. Captain, Flight 349. By the time the wheels left the ground, the video was bouncing across Reddit and TikTok, thousands of views in minutes. The algorithm loved the tension, the arrogance caught on film. Raymond sat, staring at his book, reading the same stanza 3 times without realizing, a quiet awareness stirring. Not anger, not shame, but the sense that this wasn't about him anymore. Someone else had acted, and the world was watching. Flight 349 was halfway to Seattle when the ripple began. The 22-second video, grainy but clear, tore through timelines. Brian hadn't planned to post it, but something about the pilot's tone, like Raymond had wandered into someone else's space, gnawed at him. When he rewatched, he heard those 6 words again. "I guess they let anyone up here now." It wasn't just smug, it was loaded, dripping with the quiet contempt people like Raymond had navigated forever. The camera caught the smirk, the flight attendant's laugh behind Reynolds, like it was a cue. By the time drinks were served, the video hit 10,000 views. By snacks, 100,000. Raymond, unaware, thanked the flight attendant with a smile, took his ginger ale, and finally read his page. Outside, the sun dipped below soft clouds. Below, a digital storm brewed. Hashtag sparked. Raha Flight 349. Raymond Carter. Someone matched his name to a retired principal from a local education article. A Facebook post of him in a cap and gown with 3 graduates was shared on X. This is the man the pilot tried to shame. He taught our kids. He deserves better. Replies poured in, angry, ashamed, or silent shares. A petition to investigate the airline formed as Raymond quietly turned pages, oblivious to the noise. In the cockpit, Reynolds, who'd flown hundreds of routes and dodged complaints for years, was equally unaware. He knew how to cover tracks, talk his way out. But this wasn't 1998, not behind closed doors or buried in a file. This was the Internet, and the Internet doesn't forget. Brian whispered to his wife, "It's blowing up." She glanced at his phone. "Should we tell him?" She looked at Raymond, sipping his drink, jotting in his book's margins. "I don't think he knows," she said. They waited, maybe not wanting to disturb his peace, maybe unsure how to tell someone their dignity was trending. In seat 4C, a teen in pink headphones showed her mom the clip. Her mom gasped, glanced at the cockpit door, then back at the screen. People shifted, no confrontations, just quiet looks, silent judgment, a new awareness of the man in 2A and the one behind the cockpit door. Flight attendants noticed too. One whispered, "You seen it?" The other nodded. "It's bad." A message hit the airline's HQ, then another. By 4:32 p.m., the PR team was alerted. By 4:45, an internal meeting was set. Files were pulled, past complaints checked. Raymond, eyes closed, recalled a poem he'd read to students, "I Too Sing America." He knew the irony, the weight. He didn't need sympathy. He just wanted to land. But as he stepped off the plane, the ground beneath Blake Reynolds' career was already crumbling. Flight 349 landed at Seattle-Tacoma International around 6 p.m. The plane glided to the runway. Passengers reached for phones and bags, but a strange silence hung in the front rows, a collective awareness of something unspoken. Raymond stood, stretched, and adjusted his blazer. A soft voice stopped him. "Sir," Brian said from across the aisle, "before you go, you should know." Raymond turned, calm as ever. Brian showed his phone. Raymond's face, mid-sentence, next to the pilot's words. Raymond's brows furrowed slightly. "It's gone viral," Brian said. "People are talking." Raymond studied the screen, then looked at Brian. "You recorded this?" "I did. I didn't plan to post it at first, but it felt wrong to let it go." A long pause. "Thank you," Raymond said. No anger, no tension, just quiet acknowledgement. By the time Raymond disembarked, his name was on national radio. Within 30 minutes, a cable news network ran a brief segment, analysts dissecting the pilot's comment frame by frame. Legal experts called it a microaggression, unprofessional, unacceptable. The airline's social media team rushed out a vague statement. "We are aware of the situation on Flight 349 and are conducting an internal review." It didn't help. 9 screenshots of old posts surfaced. An anonymous flight attendant leaked a complaint against Reynolds from 2 years prior. Same behavior, another route, a passenger feeling belittled. Whispers among staff grew, Reynolds had been this way for years. One posted anonymously, "Arrogant, untouchable." We all knew. It unraveled fast. The airline's PR team tried a follow-up, promising accountability, but the comment sections exploded with stories from other passengers, subtle slights, ID checks in first class when others weren't asked, being moved, questioned, watched. A second video emerged late that night. A retired flight attendant shared a voicemail Reynolds left after a crew dispute, his voice mocking, "Cry to HR all you want. They'll side with me. They always do." It sealed it. By morning, hashtags were headlines. "Veteran pilot under fire after viral video sparks backlash." Who is Raymond Carter? Retired educator at center of first-class incident. In a modest hotel room near the airport, Raymond sat with black coffee, his phone buzzing every 10 minutes. Reporters, former students, strangers with thanks. He ignored most. He didn't want to be a symbol, but the airline's 10:43 a.m. statement caught him off guard. Captain Reynolds was on administrative leave pending investigation. Not justice, not yet, but a crack in a wall that had stood too long. Raymond took one call from a young woman. "You don't know me, but you were my principal in 2007. Thank you for staying calm, for not letting that moment harden you. You taught us that. Now, the world sees it." He smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "I'm just glad someone paid attention," he said. "That's what matters." But what Raymond said next, and how it shook the industry, no one expected. He didn't seek the spotlight, but when requests piled up, one stood out. Denise Corbin, a respected Seattle journalist known for real stories, not viral fluff. She wanted truth, not sound bites. They met 2 days later in a community center gym. No lights, no stage, just 2 chairs, 1 camera, and the hum of a heater. Denise started gently. "Mr. Carter, when you boarded Flight 349, did you imagine we'd be here, talking on camera?" Raymond smiled. "I imagined a cold drink, maybe a nap. That's about it." She chuckled. "When the pilot questioned you, what went through your mind?" Raymond paused, choosing his words. "I've been asked if I belong in a lot of rooms in my life. That one just had wings." Denise blinked, then nodded. "You didn't react with anger. Why?" "Because I wasn't surprised," Raymond said, "and because I wasn't there to make a scene. I was there to rest, to sit in a seat I paid for, fair and square. Nobody's disbelief ever changed my truth." That clip went viral within hours, 1 million views. Something shifted. It wasn't outrage anymore. It was respect for a man who could have fought fire with fire, but chose patience. Raymond didn't name-call, didn't call for boycotts, didn't raise his voice. He spoke about dignity, about what it means to sit where people don't expect you and stay anyway. "I told my students," he said, "you can't control how others see you, but you can control how you see yourself." That's the fight. He shared small stories, being mistaken for a janitor as a principal, ignored in meetings until someone realized he was in charge. He wasn't bitter, maybe tired, but not broken. The public heard it. People spoke up, not just online, but on camera. Former passengers, crew, airline staff who'd seen Reynolds' behavior. The picture was clear. Then came a whistleblower, an anonymous former pilot from the same airline, describing a culture where complaints about senior captains vanished or were handled in-house. This incident with Mr. Carter only went public because someone had the guts to record, they said. The airline's third statement was longer, with words like inclusivity and accountability, but still didn't name Reynolds. Asked if he was satisfied, Raymond shook his head. Satisfaction's not what I'm after. I just want systems to learn. I want the next person in seat 2A to sip their drink and read their book without question. Then it shifted. Within days, the airline launched a policy review for conduct on all domestic flights. Training programs were overhauled. Language sensitivity workshops mandated for everyone from gate agents to captains. Then, unexpectedly, the airline renamed its internal conduct policy the Carter Code. Raymond wasn't thrilled with the name. "I didn't write any code," he said. "I just sat." But he got the point. It wasn't about policy. It was about a new baseline. Respect wasn't optional anymore. The final blow came quietly. Blake Reynolds' contract was terminated. No headlines, just an internal memo confirming his exit. Some said it wasn't enough. Raymond never commented on the firing. He thanked Denise for letting him speak, stood, buttoned his blazer, and said, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got grandkids waiting." While headlines focused on Reynolds, the real story was the man in seat 2A. Raymond Carter didn't return to a cheering crowd or news crews. He went home to a modest one-story in Decatur, where the hedges were trimmed just so, and the porch swing creaked as it had since his wife picked it in '92. Inside, framed photos lined the walls, students shaking his hand, teachers he mentored, his daughters in graduation gowns, his late wife Gloria smiling after their 25th anniversary trip to Savannah. He dropped his bag, hung his blazer, and sank into his favorite chair, the one he'd graded papers in long after everyone else was asleep. His phone buzzed. New messages, new mentions, but he ignored them, not out of pride. He just wanted something else for a while. He turned on the jazz station, let Coltrane fill the room, and leaned back with a sigh. That evening, his youngest granddaughter, Ava, 8 and full of questions, climbed onto his lap. "Grandpa," she said, "Mommy said you were on the news." He chuckled. "I suppose I was." "Did you do something bad?" "No, baby. I just sat." She thought for a second. "Why are people mad?" Raymond paused. "Because some folks don't expect certain people in certain places, and when they see 'em there, they get uneasy." She frowned. "That's dumb." He smiled. "It is, but it's been happening a long time." Then she said something that stuck. "You didn't yell. You just stayed sitting. That's cool." Raymond kissed her forehead. Standing still's the loudest thing you can do sometimes. In the weeks that followed, attention faded, hashtags moved on, but the changes stuck. The airline kept the Carter Code. Other airlines quietly adopted similar policies. Once a month, Raymond got a letter from a young teacher, a retired veteran, a college student who saw the video and realized they didn't have to stay silent when someone questioned their place. He never wrote about it, never gave long speeches. He just replied with a short note and a handwritten quote. "You're enough. Let them adjust." Raymond didn't need to be a symbol. He didn't want to be anyone's cause. But what he gave people, one calm response and decades of quiet strength, proved character speaks loudest when you don't have to shout. In a world obsessed with clapbacks and takedowns, he reminded us that not every battle is one with force. Sometimes it's silence, dignity, the unshakable calm in the face of disrespect. That's what changed things. Not the video, not the headlines, but the man in seat 2A who'd been overlooked 100 times before and chose not to let it make him bitter. He just sat and waited for the world to catch up. So here's the lesson. If someone questions where you are, don't give them the satisfaction of shrinking. Sit tall, speak when it matters, and remember your presence alone can challenge their assumptions more than any argument ever could. If this story means something to you, share it. Not for clicks, but for the next person sitting in a seat they're told they don't deserve. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more stories that matter, about real people, real moments, and the truths that bind us all.